Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa. If you enjoy our videos and like our content, please subscribe and like. Our community is really taking off, and it is emblematic of an awakening that's happening in the general spiritual sphere. And I was doing another coaching call today, and we are offering coaching calls, and I will leave my email in the description so that we can set one of those up because they're very dynamic, and I'm going to bring my years of experience in this material and in business to bear in setting up a personalized plan for your rapid lifestyle transformation in all areas of your life, using the law of assumption, the law of attraction, mysticism, spirituality, and so on. But I was doing a call with a woman today, and I always ask permission before I share any stories, and of course I never share any names or private details of my clients, so rest assured of that. I would always ask you permission before I shared it in a video. But this lady was upset because for 3 years she has been in love with this man, and they were together at some point, but the relationship grew cold and he left her for another person, and for 3 years there's been no contact. And yet the feelings for this person have remained in her, and she is coming to me for guidance on what to do. And so many law of attraction coaches and teachers in this modality do teach on specific person, but I think they're leaving out a few critical elements. And so we're going to make this video, it's going to be monumental because it goes into some things that are implicit in a lot of the teachings that are out there today, but which I believe are not made explicit enough so that people could understand. So a lot of issues come into this point of specific person. And using this modality, the law of assumption, law of attraction, and these things in general, when it comes to acquiring certain material goals, and is one thing. In fact, I think it's a lot easier because you're dealing with a rather static dynamic there, a rather static thing. And that is, you're trying to acquire something which, at least in the 3D, seems like it would have not have consciousness. Of course, as we know, in the higher levels, everything has consciousness. Even science is proving this. So, at root, there is no difference. But to our minds, which are the arbiters here, this makes a difference. When you're dealing with conscious individuals and relationships, and this is very important to friendship, to business, to family, and to romance, because you're dealing with living beings who supposedly have consciousness and free will. So now when you're dealing with multiple parties who have free will, how can we apply these principles? Or how can we use these principles to get a handle on the situation and to try to attain our goal? Or should we even do that? We're going to explore this in this video like I think no other coaches out there are doing. So the first thing to understand, free will at root, at the highest level of that scale of being, is a complete illusion. There is no free will. Because there's nothing to exercise will upon, as we did as we went over in our video on one power. There's only one power, but when you boil it down to that level of divinity on our charts of the spiritual levels, there's nothing to exercise power on. Therefore, there's no power. The same goes with will. When you say that there's only one will because there's only one consciousness, there is no will, so therefore there is no free will. However, we did choose to come down here from the spiritual oneness into multiplicity, and I've discussed this in many videos. All of the great faiths discuss this, the biblical tradition, the Quranic tradition where it says qalu bala, and the people agreed to come down. Of course, it's very heavily emphasized in the Hindu and the Vedic traditions and so on. But we chose to come down here, and the main reason was boredom. Why else would you come down from perfection into imperfection unless you wanted to experience multiplicity and then come back to the unity? that is at root why we came down here. So it's not as if we came down here for a task. It's not as if we came down here due to karma or being forced, unless you're looking at it from the conscious mind. Then you could say that we were forced, or as Jean-Paul Sartre talked about, that we came of no volition of our own and through no fault of our own, we were simply flinged into this existence. And Neville Goddard does seem to believe that we came here under compulsion. But these two dualities, like all dualities, resolve themselves when we move up conceptually that spiritual scale of being, which I am going to be publishing soon, a picture of that. So what does this mean? This means that when you're in this game, for the most part, you came to experience other consciousnesses. Because if you had only wanted to experience one consciousness, you could easily do that. And indeed, there are film roles that you can enter into when there's no other consciousness. And I just wanted to share a quote from Neville Goddard, which illustrates this. And many people who have spiritual and mystical experiences will experience this aspect of there only being one consciousness. And I think Neville also spoke about one time where he was speaking to someone and the person actually spoke Neville's thoughts, as if to say that Neville's thoughts were the only thoughts that existed. And of course, at root, when we move up the spiritual levels of that scale, this is the case. And that's why, by the way, you can have whatever you want in this experience. But he said, one day I quietly slipped from my apartment in New York into some remote yesteryear's countryside. And this was basically a spiritual experience that he had, I think, while he was meditating or daydreaming. He said, as I entered the dining room of a large inn, I became fully conscious. I knew that my physical body was immobilized on my bed back in New York City, yet I was here as awake and as conscious as you have ever been. And this goes into the fact that when we train our consciousness and when we train our mentality to be able to enter into states, we can be in different dimensions at the same time. And in fact, we are always in an infinite number of dimensions, both horizontally and vertically on that spiritual scale. And I discussed this in our video yesterday, and you can refer to that. For example, you can imagine yourself in a certain place that you want to be. Say you're at work, and then you can imagine yourself in a boat in the ocean, and then you can imagine yourself imagining yourself back at work. You can do this, and with practice, it will become very vivid, and you won't even need to have an experience because it will be so vivid in your imagination, and you will experience the reality of that on a different dimension. So he said, I intuitively knew that if I could stop the activity of my mind, everything before me would freeze. No sooner was the thought born than the urge to try it possessed me. I felt my head tighten, then thicken to a stillness. My attention concentrated into a crystal clear focus, and the waitress walking walked not. And I looked through the window, and the leaves falling fell not. And the family of four eating ate not. And they lifting the food lifted it not. Then my attention relaxed, the tightness eased, and of a sudden all moved onward in their course. The leaves fell, the waitress walked, and the family ate. Then I understood Blake's vision of the sculptures of Losses Halls. Neville Goddard says that. And we are going to discuss Losses Halls in a minute here. So there are states that you can enter into where there's no consciousness, but of course you don't want that. There are also states that you could enter to. Now we're going back into specifically what I told this woman about her significant other, her specific person, as they call it in the manifesting community. Do you want this person to be conscious or not? If you don't want this person to be conscious and you want him to be an automaton or a robot, you can definitely manifest that. But there would be no love there, because love as we experience has to be freely given, as we experience it on the 3D. Otherwise, we would not want that, or at least we would not want a partner, we would want a slave. And I don't think that this person, I don't think the most people who wish to have love requited by another person want a slave. Rather, they want it willfully. And at the same time, they're upset about the possibility that that person can say no. But when you come into the game, You tacitly accept that there is a possibility that that person can say no, but there is a way out of that. And this consists of being able to live in multiple dimensions at the same time and accept that. So when Abraham Hicks is usually asked about this, Esther will always say that we cannot control what other people do to us. We cannot control their reactions to us. All we can do is control our feeling reaction to that. And that's very true. So what she always recommends in these cases is that usually when you have an unrequited love, or you have a specific person who's not showing you the attention that you want, you should simply go general on that, which means focus around that. Focus on things that are of the same vibration as that make you feel good, and then soon the momentum will carry you to where there will be a situation in which that person will be with you. And that's the basic crux of this. Of course, the people watching this channel want to be more specific, and they want their hands in the clay. Knowing this, and knowing that we are in a world with multiple consciousnesses of free will, how do we get around this? Well, as Vadim Zeland talks about in Reality Transurfing, there are two modalities for creating. There's using inner intention, that he calls it, and outer intention. Using inner intention is trying to go out in the workaday world and just force things to happen through effort. And this can even be done when we're trying to change a situation by applying the processes and principles. This young lady told me that she had been for years meditating on this, visualizing them being together, and even feeling good about it, and yet she has not been able to manifest that on the physical. Why is that? It's because you're trying to manifest it through applying the tools, and when you do this, you're simply back out there on the physical. It is as if you're trying to send a text message to that person, which, by the way, she did, and I would always recommend never send a text unless you're doing it vibrationally on another dimension. You can imagine yourself sending a text to that person, or you can even imagine yourself receiving a text, but never send a text, especially if that person is not responding to you. If nothing else, for the fact that that makes you look desperate, and then that makes you less attractive to the person, as dating coaches will tell you. But this goes beyond that. So the only way to do this is through what Vadim Zeland calls indirect will, or outer intention. And the outer intention is simply going around the topic, not physically or even mentally trying to bring the topic to you. And there's only one way to do that. And that is to be in another dimension where you're in the state of that person responding to you in the way that you want them to respond of their free will. And that state indeed exists. And there are multiple ways to attach with that state, and then to make that state a part of who you are. And then that will manifest on the physical, for it must. But by then you won't care whether or not it manifests on the physical. There's one second issue that I just wanted to go on in this vein. And that is, a desire or wish is not static. We make it static because our limited rational minds have to have some sort of photograph to hold on to. But reality is not a photograph. It's not even a moving picture. It is a fact of multiple, almost infinite atoms moving around. Therefore, there's no finish line because there's no solidity. Therefore, your desire and your goal can change. Therefore, if you desire a specific person, try to be open to the fact that maybe that person is not the one for you, and maybe there's someone even better for you in the pipeline. And Neville Goddard even said that most people whom he imagined for getting married, he would attend all of their weddings, but it would be with a different person. So don't simply become attached to one person. But if you are, you can indeed manifest that person. And we're going to show you a few techniques on how to do this. And we are working with this young lady, and we will be getting back to you on the details of that as they come in. I want to read from Neville Goddard's book, The Power of Imagination, because this is very pertinent to this. And this is pertinent to the film roles and to the infinite states that you can get into, and how we're going to use this and apply it to your specific person here in a minute. He says this experience of mind not only shows the world as a manifestation of the mental activity of the individual observer, but it also reveals our course of time as jumps of attention between eternal moments. An infinite abyss separates any two moments of ours. We, by the movements of our attention, give life to the sculptures of Los's halls. Think of a world as containing an infinite number of states. So every state that is possible is already ready-made and finished. And all you have to do is focus on it. Think of these states as rooms or mansions in the house of God. And like the rooms of any house, they're fixed relative to one another. But think of yourself, the real self, the imaginative you, as the living, moving occupant of God's house. Each room contains some of Los's sculptures, with infinite plots and dramas and situations already worked out but not activated. They're activated as soon as human imagination enters into and fuses with them. Each represents certain mental and emotional activities. To enter a state, man must consent to the ideas and feelings which it represents. These states represent an infinite number of possible mental transformations which man can experience. To move into another state or mansion necessitates a change of beliefs. All that you could ever desire is already present and only waits to be matched by your beliefs. The moment man matches the beliefs of any state, he fuses it with, and this union results in the activation and projection of his plots, plans, dramas, and situations. It becomes the individual's home from which he views the world. It is his workshop, and if he is observant, he will see outer reality shaping itself upon the model of this imagination. So, all you have to do is attain the state of the wish that you fulfill. And it's much easier on this film roll to not become too overly attached to a specific person, because then you will very quickly, and I mean within a matter of hours or days, attract someone to you who's going to be perfect for you. However, that's not good enough for most of our clients. And it's fun to see if you can do this with a specific person. So what are some techniques that you can use? Well, first of all, you can start telling yourself every time that you think of that person not texting or calling, or any time that person shows less than enthusiasm for you, you can revise that. And I don't care how you feel, because again, this is not about feelings, because feelings are triggered by vibration. They are simply a physical response to a vibration. If you're vibrating on a certain level, the feeling has a lag time before it catches up. So first of all, don't care how you feel. Of course, try to feel good while you're doing this, because it will be quicker. But if you can't, that's okay. You just have to tell yourself, I have it, I am chosen, and I am with this person. That's what you can start doing. You can simply start embodying that state and wearing it as a garment, and don't care whether you believe it or not. Because as we said yesterday, you don't have to believe in God, because God believes in you. All you have to do is get into that state, and the belief and interior feelings will come, and then the exterior will come just like that. And that person will be texting you and calling you, and you will have what you want with that person. The second thing that you do is you keep imagining a certain scene, and I'd recommend a dinner, and just a simple moment in that dinner where you look at the person, and that person looks at you, and you see a satisfied look on that person. And you keep looping that in your mind. And if you can do it before you go to sleep, do it before you go to sleep. I want you to mentally rehearse yourself in that. I want you to become familiar with the features of that person, what that person looks like, what that person is wearing. Completely fill out every single detail that you can and make it as real and vivid to yourself as you can. Now here's the crux of this. You cannot check on the physical whether this happened or not, because then you're entering into your former state. So you have to not care about the physical. You have to not care about whether it happens on the 3D, because it is so vivid and real for you. And you can try other techniques, and we'll go into other techniques in other videos. The final technique is a sort of remote hypnosis, and Neville Goddard talks about this, and I wanted to discuss this. I wanted to read this from his book. So, he is saying here, basically, that failure is always due in autosuggestion by an antagonistic autosuggestion by the patient arising from objective doubt of the power of the medicine or the relic, and so on. To avoid such counter-suggestions, the patient should be unaware objectively, or the subject here, of the suggestions which are made to him or her. The most effective method of healing or influencing the behavior of others consists in what is known as the silent or absent treatment. And this has been known by healers and practitioners for years. It's best that the subject not even know that this is being done. And this hypnosis, because there's truly no time and space, this hypnosis will work on this person no matter if you're in New York and that person is in China, no matter how far or separated you are. It is not necessarily that the patient know objectively that anything is being done to him or her. From what is known of the subjective and objective processes of reasoning, it is better that he should not know objectively of that which is done to him. The more completely the objective mind is kept in ignorance of the suggestion, the better will be subjective mind to perform its functions. So basically what he says here in this book, to establish rapport, you call the subject mentally. You call his or her name. You close your eyes, you try to get into a state of alpha, and you call that person's name. You focus your attention on him or her and mentally shout his name just as you would to attract the attention of anyone. Imagine that he or she answered, and mentally hear their voice. Represent them to yourself inwardly in the state you want them to attain or to be. Then imagine that he or she is telling you in the tones of ordinary conversations what you want to hear. Mentally answer him or her. So you have a conversation with that person through an alpha state in a hypnotic state. And you can do this, and this is extremely effective. I would not try this unless you actually want to attract this person and to have this person of their own free will come into your life in the way that you wish it to be. So you call their name, you have a conversation with that person, you can hear that person saying, I love you, I want to be with you. And make this as vivid as you can, and this is a form of hypnosis, and it will prove to you these principles. So, as our answer always is, attain the state, and do not worry about what happens on the physical, and do not try to change a person's mind, or deprive that person of free will on the physical. Simply go to another film role where that person already has the will to be with you, and it will happen in your experience because we are constantly jumping film roles. So I hope that helps. We did go into this during the call, and I am doing coaching. You can email me at javier_novoa@hotmail.com for more. So until very soon, this is Javier. Please subscribe and like to our channel. I will see you guys very soon.